anytime for me, in our system, DQ had a certain style to him, Dan Quinn. Todd Wash has a certain style to him, and Kasarik has a certain style to him. But the common denominator to all of them is that they have such great conviction in the way they teach that it works. And so with Kasarik and what he's bringing, the conviction and the ability to coach through everything that he knows with teaching that style, that's what's going to be most prevalent or most visual to the fans.
Robert, I remember when you were first hired, we were asking you what's the deal with the Leo, and someone said, do you have to have a kind of an elite one of those guys to make this defense work? And you say, oh yeah, and then you kind of say, well, we can get by if you don't have that. Anyway, do you finally feel like you have an elite one of those?
We've got our front has a chance to be special. They know it. With great expectations, usually people rise to the level of to those expectations, and so it's like telling an offense to get by without a good quarterback. Our front is everything. It starts with the front. It's a big man's game. Big men usually win. The talented big men anyway, and to have the speed element along with Bosa's power and technical side, and then the inside guys that we have, and Solomon's been looking really, really good. So his versatility, being able to go inside, outside, is going to come to fruition the way we've envisioned it. Same thing with Armstead. So it's a very talented group, and the versatility that it's had has only been will finally be able to come to light because of the fact that you've got D Ford and Bosa to be able to fill out the edges.
While you don't have Bosa, is Armstead in that spot generally?
We're right now with OTAs. We're just trying to make sure that everybody's getting reps. So with you might see Armstead outside. You might see him at 2I. You'll see him at 3. You'll see Buckner all over the place. So it's just it's a really cool philosophy with the D-line in that he's got 4 quarters and he's throwing them out there, and you should be able to play every single spot. And the way he teaches is with a lack of gray area, they're all the same, and they're just it's been good to see it come together so far. So I wouldn't get caught up too much on where guys are playing during OTAs, even during training camp. The reality is when it comes to Sundays, there's going to be a plan on how those guys are deployed.
A lot of talk this offseason has revolved around the secondary and the fact that even after the way things went last year, you guys didn't really make significant changes personnel-wise. What gives you confidence that the secondary is going to be able to improve?
The health is always the big deal. I'll start with Sherm coming back with having now been a full 2 years removed from his Achilles. He looks good out there. He had a really good breakup today. Should have caught it on the sideline. Spoon has come with a renewed mindset, and he's looking like the person that we were having a lot of faith in after the first half of his rookie year. And then you've got guys who are out there competing. You got Verrett, who's just chomping at the bit to come in. So, and I can go through Maben, all of them. It's an exciting group to work with if we can stay healthy. I think outside our nickel spot is going to be what K1 is good. At safety, Tart and Jimmy, Marcel, AC, Exum. I'm sure I'm missing somebody, but it's a really talented group. It's good. There's a lot of natural competition at those spots. It's unfortunate what happened to Jimmy, but we have a lot of confidence in that group because it really is. It's a talented group. It's just got to stay healthy.
It was described, I think, in the initial report that Jimmy just sort of dove for a pass. Could you describe what happened?
It was a ball over the middle, and I don't know if he necessarily dove as much as maybe getting a little tangled up. And all those guys do such a good job trying to stay up, and it was kind of it was a very unfortunate thing. If he had pads on, and if he had pads on, it probably wouldn't have happened. But with what happened to him, they always try to keep their feet. That's the number one rule: keep your feet during practice. But I'm trying to be a positive person with this whole thing, and that Jimmy's been healthy as heck going into training camp his whole career, and then during the season, he's gotten hurt. This year it happened during OTAs, maybe it flips for him, so.
Robert, what position is Tarvarius Moore play?
Currently, he's at, with all the injuries that we've had, he's aligning at safety right now.
What do you consider him? Like, when the regular season starts,
Well,
where
we'll-
will he be competing?
We'll cross that bridge when we get to training camp, but right now with all the injuries and all the different lineups, with all the guys missing, we're trying to make sure that everybody's getting reps, and that's something that we loved about Tarvarius Moore is that we drafted him knowing that he's got great versatility where he could play corner and safety, and him being back there at safety for these OTAs, I mean, if he lights it up, we'll see it, so.
Hale broke up a couple passes in 7-on-7s. How much do you expect, or how much are linebackers going to be counted on to see improvement in the pass defense, especially with the new acquisitions there?
You'd love for the entire, with the acquisitions that were made up front, I'll start with them. The back end, should see it just get faster. You guys remember the Oakland game? Well, D-line was just wreaking havoc on those guys. And if you really go back and dissect that tape, the back end just got faster and faster and faster as the game went on because they're tying themselves to the rush. It just happens naturally. And so with the linebackers, with Fred having another year under his belt, having Quan Alexander here, the battle at Sam linebacker with Malcolm, Greenlaw, Elijah, and all those guys, it's a talented group of linebackers, and they'll be expected to increase productivity, no different than the safeties and corners.
What's the time frame for Alexander's return?
My understanding is training camp, but that'd probably be a question for Kyle and John.
Robert, you mentioned, the slew of injuries that Jimmy's kind of suffered over the last few years. Is that becoming a point of concern for you guys that he hasn't been available from a health standpoint, or has been able to stay available, I mean?
There's always risk reward. When you see Jimmy play, you see his personality, you see his leadership skills, his work ethic. If you're ever going to take a risk on somebody, he's the guy. I have faith that he's going to stay healthy this season. I do. I know you're probably looking at me like I'm crazy, but something good's about to happen for him, and it's going to be 2019. So.
Robert, you mentioned.
Earlier you mentioned it. Go ahead.
You mentioned Jason Verrett chomping at the bit. Obviously, it's still early on, but thus far, how has his integration into the defense been going, and what is the projected timeline for him as well?
Who you?
Verrett.
Verrett. So he's going to compete at corner, and when Verrett's healthy, no different than Jimmy, he's one of the top 20 corners in all of football. I mean, guy's special. So he'll be able to come into that. He's going to insert himself into the lineup come training camp, and I have tremendous. There's no doubt he's going to look good. His mindset, the way he carries himself, his work ethic out there with the trainers, the questions he asks in meeting rooms, his kind of just his overall presence in the building has been really special. So I'm excited to see him work. So it's going to be fun.
Earlier you mentioned the expectations that the defensive line has. What is your sense of how they've kind of embraced those expectations, and is it something that they talk about openly?
Yeah, no, they love it. They're, but at the same time, there's no complacency in the room. I mean, they are working their tails off. Whenever you all come out to practice, just watch them. They're running every snap, about 30, 40 yards to the football, and then they're running their butts back to the line of scrimmage, and more of training a mindset. There's a saying that your defense will be recognized as fast when the D-line is running, and your defense will be recognized as hard hitting when the safeties and corners are hitting. And but the D-line is changing that mindset, that relentlessness that which they're going to be expected to play is all happening right now through training with OTAs, and they're not afraid to put it on their back. So they're a great group of guys to work with.
One of the things I've noticed looking through the numbers from last year is that pressure-wise, the defensive line was pretty high up in the rankings. And when you look at hits, it's a little bit lower. And then when you look at sacks, obviously it was in the bottom, 7 teams.
Yeah.
Is that a product of just not being able to finish rushing plays? And is that something that you see turning around, finishing those pressures with sacks with what you're talking about here?
Those pressure rates get a little, I don't know if they get skewed or not, but I look at pressure based on the way the offense calls a football game. I believe we had 30 or so snaps of quick game during the course of the year. where you look at a team like the Chargers or Jacksonville, or even the Cowboys, they're up there in the 90s to almost 100 snaps of quick game. Tells me that that tells us that they're afraid of their pass rush. And so they're not designing routes that are where quarterbacks can take 1, 2, and 3 hitches. The ball's got to come out. And so when an offense changes the way they approach us and the way they attack us, then I know that we're getting pressure on the quarterback and we're changing their entire philosophy on how they want to attack us. And even though our pressure rate may have been high, the routes that we were seeing were still longer developing. Quarterback hold the ball in the pocket. So eventually you're going to get home. But for the quarterback to be able to go through his progressions and either throw it away or take a check down, now it should just be one hitch. I can't go to my next progression because if I take that second hitch, I should be getting hit by somebody. And that didn't happen as frequently as we would have liked a year ago.
What attracted you to Joe Woods?
Joe Woods? So Joe comes from, his original background is Tampa, Monty Kiffin, Cover 2, which is kind of where this whole thing kind of derived from, also with Pete Carroll and Monty Kiffin. So he came highly recommended from Gus Bradley and all the different guys who have worked with him. He's extremely detailed. He's got a great eye for technique and coaching. So it'll be seamless in terms of what he'll be asking of those DBs because it's right in line with what we teach in our scheme.
Did you come out of last season thinking we needed to make a change there, or is that just sort of how it developed?
Hafley had an opportunity to be a D coordinator at Ohio State, which is an awesome privilege for him. So that was, I don't want to say it was forced, but with Hafley going to Ohio State, it opened up the door to
I know
to
there
get
were big
Joe.
questions about the wide 9 before stopping the run. Do you think the way the game's played now, so many teams, like you said, you're a nickel a lot now, teams don't have a traditional fullback and just trying to run it down your throat, that it's probably more functional now than ever and just easier on your linebackers, just the way teams play offense?
With the wide 9?
Yeah.
Well, it's like I said,
Does that concern you as a linebacker coach? You know, just
no, it doesn't. There's with the way the game is played, it's a 4-down game anyway, and so it's that relentlessness, and the style that they play that is the most intriguing. So you still have a 3 technique, you still have a shade, you still have a 5. It's just, do you play a 6 or a 9? That's all we're talking about, and the amount of it doesn't really change that much in my mind. There's some certain runs that we may get, but overall, just from a getting off the ball, getting vertical, and creating penetration, that's, to answer your question, it does. I do feel like it lends more to the way the league has kind of evolved.
Talk about more defending that quick passing game. How important is safety continuity to that, and how much did the lack of safety continuity hurt in that regard last year?
Just overall back end, even now, the amount of communication that needs to take place, and when you're in and out of the lineup, you're changing positions because you're trying to fill in people. The volume of your voice is projected on the confidence of your knowledge of what you're being asked to do. And if you're quiet, you're probably not exactly sure, and that's what happens when you're in and out of the lineup, you're changing positions, and you're being asked to do different things. You're just not going to be sure. So the continuity, not only with yourself, to be confident to do the same thing over and over and over again, but then to be able to project your voice so that way the person in front of you knows what you're doing, you're able to talk to the corners, and there's just overall communication. It's always very, very important, especially in a scheme like ours where we may not do very much, but we are always talking to one another about formation, indicators, and the subtle adjustments that we make to put ourselves in the best position to succeed.
Has the rise of the jet sweep influenced your move to the wide 9? Is that a good defensive alignment to stop that play?
It hasn't. That wasn't one of the reasons why. The jet sweep is an issue play. I think it's a cool little play, to be honest with you. But going through off-season studies, I think we're going to have a decent handle on it. But it was more just to tie in more to what teams are actually doing to us, and the fact that, again, 300 snaps of base defense isn't very much when you're looking at the grand scheme of things. So to be able to tie those two in together so we can play ball, and it doesn't mean that we can't get to Sam on the ball. We still can very easily. Depending on personnel, it's just something that we're working through OTAs and training camp.
How steep is the learning curve for Nick Bosa, and what's he missing at this point?
Just overall reps. It's for him. You'd love for him to be out there just so he can go through and get his reps. But for those guys, maybe I underscore the D line every once in a while. But it's just the mindset and all that stuff that he's missing. Just to get his legs under him. He hasn't played football in a year. To get his sea legs back, if you will. So he's that's what I feel like he's missing. But I'm not worried about him being able to catch up.
Robert, you
Last one, guys.
obviously upgraded at edge rusher position. Without like an elite guy the last 2 years there, was there a ceiling or a real limit on how good the defense could be?
I always, I feel like we have a really sound, a very, very sound scheme. And I feel like the scheme-wise, the way it's built can keep yards at bay. You can play with good yards per play. You can play functional, sound defense. But when you don't have, when you start inserting playmakers like D Ford, Bosa, Buckner, giving him more space, Armstead, who I think is going to have a really nice jump this year, same thing with Solomon. When you start implementing those guys, now you get to your efficiency downs like third down, red zone, takeaways, where there's more pressure being put on the offense to make quicker decisions, to fit balls in tighter windows, to do things out of their character. That's where these guys are going to make the biggest difference. But when a quarterback can just sit back there and they're very comfortable and they can survey what they're seeing and make the right decision every single time, your third down it's going to be rough on third down. It's going to be rough in the red zone. It's going to be rough at taking it's going to be hard to take the ball away. And I would imagine for an offense it'd be no different if they didn't have the quarterback. You can generate yards all you want, but in efficiency downs where it comes time where it's all about precision, third down, red zone, keeping the ball in your hand, I would imagine, I don't know the stats, but I would imagine it'd be very hard for them without that guy throwing the rock around. And so same thing for the defensive line. They're the lifeblood of our system. So I feel like we got a good one, so we should hopefully see a much more efficient defense.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right, guys.
Thank you, everybody.